The Cost of Goods Told podcast is made possible by the following sponsors. Duke's Premium Meats Home Delivery is committed to providing you with the best quality meat delivered right to your door, offering certified Angus beef, grass-fed beef, Wagyu, and many more premium options. Nobody beats Duke's Meats. Make sure to check out all that Duke has to offer at dukespremiummeats.com. Criswell Culinary aims to create a new standard of unique, affordable hot sauces that satisfies the more developed cravings of today. Bernie Brand Texas-style hot sauce is a boldly layered sauce with density and personality to proudly represent Texas. Go to BernieBrand.com to find a retailer near you. That's Bernie, B-O-E-R-N-E, brand.com. 0 Point Organics grows and supplies microgreens for over 30 major restaurants in the Houston area. Consistently perfect quality in flavor and appearance, their microgreens will be the best you or your customers have ever had every single time. Go to pointorganics.com.
Welcome to the Cost of Goods Told podcast. I am Darren Lafferty, joined as usual by co-producer Chef Connor Moran. Welcome to the show, sir.
Man, thanks for having me.
I like for you to show up weekly. Thanks for doing that. So as usual, we always have a guest, and we feel extremely privileged and honored to have two more special husband and wife team. And we love having husband and wife team. But tonight it is Veronica and John Avila from Burro the Bull. Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks so much for having us, man.
Thanks for having us.
And not to leave out, Henderson and Kane is your other location, which we all know is located at the corner of Henderson and Kane.
That's right.
We know now. So thank you guys. Look, I don't know if today's your day off. Normally it is for the barbecue guys, but is today your day off?
No.
Hardly.
No, we're running 7 days a week at this point, but
then thank you for coming,
it's our pleasure.
And you brought some wonderful food with you, some comfort food. I think we had like turkey tamales with mole sauce. We had some braised short rib.
Right, turkey mole tamales. We had a short rib that was dressed with a cold brew and ancho sauce.
Man, that was
drizzled
fantastic.
all over. So good.
Then
so
the acorn squash.
Roasted acorn squash, stuffed
belly.
with pork belly, and roasted pumpkin dressed with a little pork belly.
You stick a fork in me, I'm done.
I know,
mean,
right?
it was absolutely wonderful. Thank you for doing that. It's a treat. We don't normally, we never turn down food, but when you walked in with trays, I'm like, I'm gonna give this guy a hug. He's getting a hug.
Our first catered podcast.
Yeah.
The weather's turned today, of course, and so we wanted to do something a little wintry.
Perfect timing.
I think it was good timing.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you, weather.
Yeah, thank you. So let's talk about who you guys are. Let's talk about a little bit. Veronica, tell us who you are, where you grew up, and ultimately, I mean, how you kind of got here.
How did I get here? Gosh. So I was born and raised in El Paso.
Okay. So you're a Texas girl.
Texas girl, right on the border. Spent plenty of time growing up, crossing over the border and going back and forth. It's like everyday life there.
Yeah.
If you know anything about El Paso. But I ended up in Houston because I wanted to join the military.
Really?
Oh, and we're on Veterans Day, so that's even
This is
better.
Veterans Day, yeah.
And as it turns out, I was 1 pound overweight. And so I was not allowed to go.
Are you kidding? I didn't know that was a rule. I don't know.
It's a rule. So even though I scored like a 90-something on my ASVAB, I was not allowed to go. They even gave me a body fat test, and I was 1% over. So
everything happens for a reason. Right?
That's how I ended up moving to Houston.
Okay.
Studied architecture because my father lives here.
At the University of Houston.
At U of
I
H.
went to U
So
of
you're
H.
Cougar.
Yeah. And I think it was just meant to be because I don't think I would have done very well taking orders. But
John, we'll hear about that in a minute.
Requirement in the
She's right.
And so, so I moved here, studied architecture, and I just couldn't leave. I actually almost went back. I really wanted to move to New Mexico. That's always been kind of a dream of mine. I love New Mexico. The everything from the forest to the desert. It has like such a interesting mix of everything.
Lack of humidity,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I ended up, but I did end up staying in Houston.
So how long have you been in Houston then?
I've been in Houston for almost 20 years.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And I spent a good portion of that time working at Gensler, which is one of the largest international architecture firms.
Yeah.
and did some pretty incredible stuff working for them, primarily hospitality. So I started, before that I was doing restaurants. I designed restaurants like The Reef, a couple things for Hungry's. That was really the only local thing I had.
Okay.
But then I started working on hotels, so a lot of international hotels.
Very cool.
Even did one in St. Petersburg.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
As a matter of fact, when we met, she was working in Macau, China, on a casino hotel there, and I always liked watching her come home, and she'd have these big drawings to spread out on the floor, and I'd watch her toil over them.
Pages.
I would watch her toil over them, and it was really cool to see. So we hit it off right away.
So it's something you love to do. Obviously, architecture. I mean, did you have a background? Was your dad in architecture? How'd you fall in love with that?
Actually, I don't know how. I used to always draw as a kid, and so I was also very good at math.
Okay.
And so in my mind, I kind of put those things together, and that was what equated to architecture.
Okay.
That's really all I knew about architecture
So
until I started studying it.
No food background at all?
Well, kind of. My grandparents actually had a Mexican restaurant.
Okay.
I never knew the restaurant because they retired when I was really young, and they opened a food truck and would only serve on the weekends. So I remember the food truck.
Okay.
I think you said that was like their retirement little plan or something.
Yeah, it absolutely was.
know.
But my grandparents met because my grandmother was working in a tortilla factory, and my grandfather went to buy tortillas from that place.
Right.
And that's how they met. So yeah.
That's awesome. With a project like designing a restaurant, we'll use maybe like a Hungry's, for example. What's that process like for you? Like, I mean, because you've got to take the vision of the restaurateur, translate that to Houston city, and then kind of be that middle person in between, which both sides typically don't see eye to eye on, on quite a few.
Well, I think they should. I mean, from my perspective, architecture, or really, I should say the other way around, that food is really just an extension of that. You're creating an experience,
Right.
and the food is the absolute last thing of that part of that experience, where the architecture starts when you arrive at the space or the place or
Right.
whatever it might be.
Right.
And it's that whole progression to the point where you get to the table and you sit down and you have your food. All of those things I think should align.
Okay. So when you are designing, so if like, let's say someone comes with a new concept or something along those lines, what do you look for either in restaurants when you walk in from kind of like the layout? Because you would have to think about, all right, they're coming in, double doors has an effect on this, or, if you have the hostess stand off to the side, that allows for certain things. What are some of the key things that you look at? Because we all do it probably whenever we walk into a restaurant. I come from the chef side or the service side of things, where I'm like, okay, I'm watching the busboys, I'm watching the servers, I'm watching the managers interact and so forth.
Sure.
I assume part of you is kind of going, well, that's not quite to scale, or something along those lines, or that should be 3 feet further back.
Yeah, I mean, the flow is definitely a huge part of that. And, we like to say in architecture that you're essentially controlling where someone is going when they come into a space. And so if you don't allow for enough space in between, two people standing or the hostess stand, those things I think could be pretty critical. But
Sure.
at the same time, you're creating an extension of that food and that experience. So it could be something as, home style kitchen where you're really trying to feel like you're at grandma's table when you're eating.
Right.
All of those things play a different part into what you're trying to create.
I think it's a really good perspective, and we'll get to that as we talk more about how you plug that into your own restaurant. I think it's a really cool perspective of beginning to end and how to control the experience from someone who's just walking into the restaurant, right? So you're sort of managing expectations all along the way with the big food at the end, right? So people walk away with that.
So when it comes to casinos, you're managing the flow to which tables, which are the most profitable for the casinos,
That's kind of crazy. Yeah.
None for me. None of them are profitable for me.
But not for you, right?
When I worked on the hotel in China, the one in Macau, Macau is known as the Las Vegas of China, and the Parisian was the name of the hotel. I met on a regular basis with the feng shui master.
Oh, shit.
And so he would determine which quadrant of the building he thought would make the most money. And we would really have to design the entire thing, or redesign, I should say,
Really?
to fit what he was suggesting. Because what had been proven, the Venetian, there's a Venetian there in Macau as well that's a replica of the Venetian in Las Vegas. And they had expected to make their money back in 2 years, and based on the feng shui master's guidance, they made it back in 8 months.
Oh.
And so they weren't not going to listen to him.
Right.
Right.
His bonus checks were big too.
I mean,
I'm
little
sure.
did that, customers know that that's really what was going on.
Yeah.
which
That's
is-
going to be a new architectural degree too. It's like, I have a, bachelor's in architecture and associates in feng shui, and it can make you some serious
I was in
money,
China, right?
as you say.
John, tell us about you.
I was born and raised in Houston. Love Houston. Always have ended up back in Houston just because I don't know. I guess this is where I'm from, and I just love it so much. And I've seen Houston grow a lot. So
You grew up on the east side?
I did, off of Harrisburg Boulevard and 75th Street.
Okay.
Love it. We live in the east side of town now. We live off of Navigation Boulevard, and we've really seen the neighborhood coming back. And there's a lot of growth, a lot of really great stuff, a lot of great art. Now more restaurants, a new wine bar actually in the area. And I think it's always surprising to folks to see just how well these places do, because there's a lot of folks living on that side of town.
Sure.
It's one of the oldest parts of Houston. Before Houston was called Houston, it was called Harrisburg City.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little bit further south, a little further southeast. It was named after the Harrisburg family of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And Harrisburg Boulevard was kind of the road to bring you into Houston from that part over there. And as you know, like a lot of the Howard Hughes connections on the East End as well, like a lot of his father's places were out there. It was a very industrial part of town as well, close to the ship channel. Navigation used to be a brick road to bring the goods from the ship channel to the warehouse district. There's a lot of history there.
There's still a lot of brick roads back there, right?
There are,
Yeah.
there are, and you'll see some of the roads that have got the asphalt over them when there's a little chunk taken out. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful red brick underneath, and
I've been to a couple of tamale festivals back there, the taco festival back there, put on by Daniel Anahosa, and I've walked those brick roads. It's
That's right.
really cool. Some
That's
of the prepreservation they've done on the east side of town.
That's right. That's right. My wife has worked closely with the East End Management District on a few projects. One of them putting together the small kiosks on the Esplanade there.
Yeah,
And it was a real good education for us to see.
that's
What's
cool.
funny is this lady here the construction will be happening on Navigation. There's holes in the ground, and she'll see them dumping these bricks into dump trucks to take them wherever they're going to throw them out, and she'll stop them and collect them. So I have a pile of bricks in the front yard right now. They're old bricks, but one day
Treasure.
a treasure, architecture
Right.
treasure.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
We'll use them one day.
Yeah. So grew up on that side of town and really love it, and happy to be building our new El Burro and the Bull right there on Harrisburg Boulevard. And really looking forward to opening and serving the community.
You'll be able to walk to work from there, or
I ride a bike for sure. yeah. But it's so close, and right now we've for the last 4 years we've lived within 2 miles of everything that we're doing, and this is the same way. This is about 1.5 miles
Very
from
cool.
our front door at home.
Let me ask you about, so with all of the long-term residents on the east side, southeast side, how are they handling all this influx of new business and younger generation and tall, high-rise, so to
Sure,
speak, building?
sure.
How's that? Do you see that? Do you experience that same thing?
No, I think just like any place where there's new stuff coming in, there's a lot of concern.
Yeah.
A lot of the older folks are concerned that maybe what they know for the last 50, 60, there's a lady that's lived in the neighborhood for 76 years, I just learned, across the street. And so, of course, they have concerns. I think, the neighborhood definitely needs growth. It definitely needs some improvements. But this neighborhood is really strong, always has been. For some reason, these folks live a long time. I think it's living a good life out there. So there's a lot of folks out there that are in their 90s that are still there. One of the things that's really good is that the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren are now moving back to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
They're buying they're buying the homes next to their grandparents' place. Some of them might be building new houses, but a lot of the old houses are being brought back to life. They're beautiful homes. They're brick homes, solid homes, built 1920s, 1930s. Just needs a little bit of care and love, and then you've got a beautiful house.
Right.
That's ready for another 50, 60
Sure.
years. And so that connection, like myself, grandkids, I'm the grandchild of our great-grandchild. My great-grandfather moved here in 1912, 1913, if I'm not mistaken, started his own business, furniture company, which was off Congress Avenue on the east side of the east edge of downtown. And I can't imagine living somewhere else in Houston. You know, I have lived in other parts of Houston. We used to have a home in the Museum District. We loved it. But just something about the East End really feels like home. For Veronica, while she was in architecture school, she lived on that side of town.
Okay.
She did some studies for her architectural program in the neighborhood, walking door to door, meeting people, knocking on doors and stuff. So it's really meant a lot to us to not only live there, but to also work with the East End Management District and kind of having some influence on stuff that's happening.
I don't have to go. So my office is located downtown, and I have to probably go through downtown and then come out through the East End to get to where I need to go. Mm-hmm. And while I don't stop there a lot, what I do notice is the very rich history, and just what you feel when you go through a community that's still so rooted, right? Is just a sense of strength and a sense of, it's just cool to be back there. I don't know. I mean, I don't live there, so I don't know every day. But when I go visit Champ Burger and I go grab a burger, right? I'm headed out of town. He's been there. We had him on the show earlier this season as well, Chris. And he speaks of the influx, right, of folks that are coming in, how he's changing his menu to accommodate some of that.
Sure.
It's just super cool. I don't know, man.
It's very perceptive of you to pick up on that, because I think that is the roots, like the word you just used. That's the roots are there, and you feel it. You kind of feel it in your bones when you're walking around. You know, it's interesting because a lot of people don't know that the ship channel is right there.
Yeah.
Like you go down Navigation Boulevard, you keep heading down, maybe just a few miles, all of a sudden there's big old ships right there in your face, and an industry that really drives Houston in a lot of ways that we didn't realize are that close to us.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Not to mention our favorite popsicle factory, local popsicle factory is right there as well. So we like taking the drive down there. And then there's a part of Navigation that's lined with really great trees, and it's just a great drive. Sometimes when we need a little bit of a break and we don't have a lot of time, we just head that way and
I think
make the loop.
Maybe what it is that I didn't communicate clearly was, I think when I'm driving through, it's probably a lack of new architecture in the area that gives me the feeling of being rooted in a community, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah,
like the guy that makes the mattresses, who will make a mattress any way you want. He's in that giant building on the East End. It's just cool. I don't know. It's just, and when I see him on TV, and I don't even know his name, but when I see him on TV, he speaks with a confidence and a no mincing word kind of. He's old school. I love that kind of feeling. You know what I mean? Because it's black and white. You know where you stand with the guy all the time, and that's what I like. And that's what I liked about the community too. You know, if you needed help, somebody probably would offer to help you.
Very cool.
But so much of Houston and now the expanding areas outside of Houston is just bulldoze, build new, bulldoze, build new, bulldoze, build new. There's not too many communities that have an establishment that's been there like Champ Burger for that long.
I don't even get that feeling from the Heights. I mean, the Heights is cool. I love the Heights, but I don't get that feeling from the Heights because it's just so overgrown and overpopulated with new architecture and fancy cars. And you go on the East End, it's just
there's definitely a humble, hard work.
That's it, humble.
Vibe that bleeds out of that place, and you can feel it for sure. A lot of industry is on that side of town. A lot of people, without realizing it, have an uncle or a cousin or somebody that works over on that side of town or did at one point, and it drives Houston, and it's amazing. You know, spending time in New York and a lot of places, London, New York, I was in California just for a little bit as well. You realize how much Houston actually affects the rest of the world. You realize how many decisions are made in Houston that affect the world when you live here and you get to see the brass tacks, basically.
Sure.
And you see these companies and these industries and these little tiny shops that actually make parts to something much bigger. That's somewhere that affects us all. And it's really a big part of that. The neighborhood I grew up in was called Pineview Place on Harrisburg and 75th, and there's basically one way in, one way out. The bayou runs along the backside of it. Mason Park is right there, which is a beautiful park. They just built a brand new bridge. It's a big park. It's really nice. Had our birthday parties there when we were little kids. But just something about that neighborhood with that park at that intersection. You go into that neighborhood now, and there's still people that have been, the kids are living there now when their grandparents were the first ones to live there.
Sure.
And that feeling is really good. And you can't just go in there and buy any house. The houses there's a few in there for sale now, but it's rare.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because the family roots are there for
Sure.
sure. The avenues are the same way. Avenue I, Avenue J, is it Avenue? Yeah, all the avenues are diagonal there. And when you go through there, you see street names that are very old,
Yeah.
you know? And if you drive up Harrisburg a little closer to the avenues and closer to where I grew up, there's maybe 2 blocks that looks like once upon a time it was going to be the downtown. It looks like it could be a downtown anywhere. And a few of those buildings have been picked up by a few folks, but nothing that's washing them out. Nothing that's not from the neighborhood probably or original to it. There's some talk about some growth and somebody building an old style plaza so that it can be a destination place for families. I really hope that works out.
Very cool.
There's a little place down there too, in the area anyway, off of Lawndale. It's called Treats of Mexico. It's a tiny little ice cream shop. Husband and wife team. Their daughter is hilarious. She works with them sometimes too. Super nice people. But the feeling I get from those kind of people is the feeling I get from that old part of the neighborhood and the good part of the neighborhood.
The good part.
So again, we're super excited to be building off of Harrisburg and look forward to really kind of contributing something to that new generation, the new wave of us that want to live there.
So, well, I was just going to say, speaking of generational or roots and so forth, your family has a little bit in the restaurant industry, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Not at all. I say this often. My grandfather. I was the first grandchild, and so I was treated like a little prince.
The anointed. You were the anointed one.
Right. So I can remember my grandfather, carrying me to the restaurant, setting me on the bar right there. I'd sit there. He had the Lance Candy glass jars behind the counter. He'd open the glass jar. I can hear the jar, making the noise. He'd pull out the piece of candy, give it to me, and while he's sweeping up the floor, he would tell me about the restaurant and tell me about people. And growing up, he used to say, I'm the luckiest man in the world because I work with my family every day, and when I turn these lights on, all my friends come to visit me.
Ah, that's cool.
And so that was something that really, it sticks with us today.
It paints a picture right away, right?
It does. And there was a pool table. I'm going to date myself in my age here, but there was a pool table in the place, and it took dimes. It used to take, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 2 dimes, and then it moved up to 5 dimes, and then later on it took quarters. But so I can remember wanting to play the pool table. I used to have to stand on a Coca-Cola crate to reach it, and I asked for dimes, and he said, "Well, I can't just give you dimes. You have to earn them." So my grandmother used to sew clothes for all of her kids, and so my grandmother sewed an apron for me. My grandfather took a broom and cut the handle in half.
Make it your size.
So make it my size. Said, "Here you go. Sweep up, and for every bottle cap you sweep up off the floor, I'll give you a nickel."
Yeah.
And then when I'd bring him all the bottle caps, and I'd have a few dimes to play the pool table.
That's cool.
And that's how I earned it. And so I grew up with that. It was called AC Signs Tamales. And then later on it was AC Signs Tamales and Barbecue. It was a husband and wife, grandma and grandpa, ice cold beer, hot tamales, some chili con carne on top. And then he moved into the building directly across the street on Sandy Point Road. And there he had a really big brick pit with cast iron lids, cast iron doors. And now when I smell brisket, I'm not smelling brisket. I'm smelling my grandfather's place. I'm smelling.
Sure.
That's what clicks in my.
It's that emotional connection you have.
It's that connection. And so even now, I'll walk into Henderson and Kane, open the door, and I smell that smokiness, and I'm like, we're doing it right. You know what I mean? I feel like we're doing it right.
Yeah.
Even the walk-in cooler, for that matter. You walk in the walk-in cooler, and it's got this certain smell to it that you're like, I remember that smell from the
You're
place.
looking for bottle caps again. Like, I want to play pool.
It was called AC Signs, but the whole family used to call it the place. So I'm going to the place, or I'll go to the place and go get some stuff, whatever. And so when I think about that a lot, and it's really great.
So from an early age, you were almost you were tapped, really, from an early age.
Yeah.
Not only just the restaurant business, but how you could become a family in the restaurant business, and not your own. All my friends come to visit me, right when I turn these lights on. So it's a really beautiful picture that your grandfather painted you. that made you want to be a part of that process.
Sure,
right? Which is super cool.
And you know, at that age, I didn't know that. At that age,
Of course not.
You know,
Yeah.
at that age, you listen to what they say, and you grow up, and then you become a teenager, and you know, maybe you know, I'm not even thinking about ever working in restaurants. And I had an Uncle Tony, my mom's brother, and Uncle Tony had me when I was about 12, 14 years old. Had me working in his restaurant called El Toro. He had a ranch out in Palestine or Buffalo, Texas, and the El Toro was in Palestine. I want to say probably around 1986-ish or so. I started working summer times over there and really getting my hands dirty. I can remember washing dishes and then thinking to myself, okay, you got to get in here and do the, you know, you got to get into it. You can't just be like delicate about it and think, oh, this is washing dishes. You got to get in there and do the work. So I'd work there during the daytime, and then I'd go tend to the fence on the ranch, you know, in the evening. Yeah. And he worked me hard, man, and he let me know, like, you know, you work hard, but this is what you can get for yourself. Spent some summers with him. Watched that brand grow. I mean, El Toro ended up growing into a much bigger thing. Our cousins now have a huge brand, and it's a big part of Houston now.
Very cool.
But those things were important to me later on in life, and I didn't know that. I did some accounting work. I wanted to have a different kind of job. So for 10, 12 years or so, I was doing accounting work at different places in the city. And then one day I sold everything I had, moved to Austin, Texas. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just thought, I'm going to move to Austin. I bumped into a farmer's market, just went downtown to go check it out, saw a farmer's market off of 3rd Street. And I told myself, man, I want to get involved with that farmer's market. I don't know how, but I want to get involved. About a week or two later, I happened to see an ad for a chef that was looking for an assistant, and I called her up, and she welcomed me into her kitchen. Melissa Brinkman is her name. She owns the Cake and Spoon Baking Company in Austin. Super great lady, super great chef. There were probably more than a couple of times that she could have just kicked me out of that kitchen and sent me on my way. But she gave me every opportunity. I learned a lot from her. And that's where I met Aaron and Stacy Franklin and John Lewis. And we realized that there was a lot of connection there, and I started working with them. Of course, we were in the trailer at the time. It's just starting, and I can remember, I'll tell you guys, I can remember the day that we were like, there's 15 people in line, dude. Like, holy cow. You know what I mean? Like, this is awesome. Like, you know, this is great. And then shortly after that, Aaron got his hands on the building. And we spent some nights there painting it, fixing up walls. Aaron is a very industrious guy and did a lot of that work himself. Hardworking guy, go-getter for sure. And it was a good lesson too on bringing back, like, because Aaron didn't reinvent the wheel. Aaron shined up that old ass wheel and made us all realize, like, this is the purity of it all, right? Like, before that, the barbecue scene was more set it and forget it. I think that was like the kind of the thing, like, don't worry about watching it all, set it and forget it, come back to it and you'll be just fine. And Aaron said, no, let's get a stick burner, let's do it for, you know, let's make it a 24-hour process, and let's be pure with it, let's be simple. And as you know, it brought everything back to life. The barbecue scene today would not be the same if it wasn't for Aaron.
So if I'm reading between the lines, this is where you learned how to do barbecue.
It was a really good reminder. I remember the brick pits from my grandfather's place and always spending time with him and watching them do. They were well known for their briskets and for their brisket tamales. And so I knew all this stuff already. John Lewis, I don't think John Lewis gets enough recognition. He's in the Carolinas now. But I'll tell you right now, John Lewis was a killer. And John Lewis taught me a lot about all of that stuff. And so between him and Aaron, it was a really good chance to remind myself of what the pure part of barbecue was, and how smoke was, you know, the most important thing about it. Right?
What's interesting is that you left Houston, went to Austin, and then boom, you're in a different industry. Let's talk more about that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll jump back into you, Austin, Aaron Franklin, and then, of course, how you met your wife and got together. So stay tuned for a message from our sponsors, Bernie Brand, Duke's Premium Meats, and 0 Point Organics. We'll be right back.
The Cost of Goods Told podcast is made possible by the following sponsors. Criswell Culinary aims to create a new standard of unique, affordable hot sauces that satisfies the more developed cravings of today. Bernie brand Texas-style hot sauce is a boldly layered sauce with density and personality to proudly represent Texas. Go to BernieBrand.com to find a retailer near you. That's Bernie, BOERNE, brand.com. 0 Point Organics grows and supplies microgreens for over 30 major restaurants in the Houston area. Consistently perfect quality in flavor and appearance, their microgreens will be the best you or your customers have ever had every single time. Go to pointorganics.com. Duke's Premium Meats Home Delivery is committed to providing you with the best quality meat delivered right to your door. Offering certified Angus beef, grass-fed beef, Wagyu, and many more premium options, nobody beats Duke's Meats. Make sure to check out all that Duke has to offer at dukespremiummeats.com. Welcome back to the Cost of Goods Told podcast. John, I think where we left off, you were talking about your stint in Austin and kind of getting your feet wet culinarily again, after culinarily? Is that a word? I'm making it up. I don't care. I'm making words all the time on this podcast.
Maybe I don't know. I'm just saying, man, culinarily.
So that's why I do this verbal podcast. I don't write nothing.
Ordinarily, I don't hear culinarily. So I didn't know.
It's a word now.
It's on Wikipedia.
So what was after all that? So, you did Austin, and then how long were you in Austin for?
So I was in Austin for 3 years.
Okay.
For 3 years, and I was in Melissa's kitchen for about that long. Again, that was a really good. And while I was at Franklin, I was still in Melissa's kitchen.
Okay,
so
you did both.
Right.
I was working 7 days a week, and she just really taught me a lot, and really, I loved it. I mean, I remember the first time I was in the kitchen with her alone, and she would sit and talk to her food and talk to herself, and I thought, man, what's going on? But then you realize how important it is, and how much you love what you're doing when someone like that is teaching you. So it was pastry, and between the smoke and the hard wood and the dirtiness, and then going into pastry where it's very delicate and very clean and very thought out. It was a really good balance for me in education in culinary. And I'm not sure if you know this, but actually Melissa is the person that does all of the desserts for Franklin Barbecue. So when you go to Franklin Barbecue, those little mini pies, those little tarts and stuff, those are all Melissa's.
When are you available now to go to Franklin Barbecue? We're going to load you up in the car.
If anybody's going to get
if anybody's going to get to cut the line, it's going to be John.
I love it, and I love going back to Austin. And Melissa is still at all the farmers markets. That's what she loves doing. She does a lot of private events as well, because once you have her product and you fall in love with it, and you know how unique it is, and it's very rustic, handmade. It's nothing fancy schmancy. I would say it's just fancy, and so it's really good stuff. And I love her a lot. She means a lot to me, and she's definitely one of the people that when I accomplish things and when I do things, I hope that she sees it and takes a little bit of ownership, because I wouldn't be here, I think, if it wasn't for her help along the way too. So there was a lot of steps.
Let me ask you a question, John. So you were doing accounting for 10 to 12 years. You were unhappy. You hated it. Whatever it was, wasn't your calling. What in the hell made you want to go from basically a 5-day-a-week job, move cities, work 7 days a week, 2 different jobs? What drove you away from? I'll call it the cube farm, right? We're sitting in cubicles, and what drove you away from that? Was it your family's heritage in the business? Was it that connection?
I couldn't tell you, man. I really can't, and I thought about this a lot, and I think, it was a time in my life where I was, I'd been in a relationship for a long time, for 10 years, about 10 years, and I had just become single.
Okay.
And so I looked at it as an opportunity of kind of figuring things out for myself.
Okay.
And so I had a great job. I spent some time with the Houston Symphony, the Houston Grand Opera, doing accounting work for them seasonally. Loved that. Loved everything about it. Thought it was great being there. And then I ended up at a place over Stewart and Stevenson over on the north side, doing some work for them. And I had a little office, and I had my inbox.
Yep.
I had my outbox with
Yep.
my computer in the middle. My desk was perfectly clean.
Your khakis, your button down, your
everything was perfect. My job was great. Loved it. But something happened. I don't know what it was, but
Yeah.
it just was an opportunity that I could move to Austin. And maybe if I think about it, maybe I wanted to move to Austin when I was younger. I didn't end up doing it because I wanted to, I did the work that I did, and moved. I don't know why.
Is that a prescription though that you would give to someone else? Would you, if you're sitting down and you see this person, you know him, this is your friend. He's sitting in his khakis and his tie, and he's bouncing around doing freelance accounting, and his life is set, and he's comfortable. Or you're like, that. Let's go to Austin and work at the farmer's market, and then you can have 2 jobs and 7 days a week.
Right.
Would you think about that. Would you say that out loud to someone else?
No, I don't think so. And I think even my parents, my family were like, "What are you doing? Like you're going to making a lot less money.
Yeah.
You're working a job that's nothing like what you were working." But I'll tell you, I can remember it was on a Saturday at the farmer's market, and I can remember being tired, being really exhausted, and the farmer's market had just ended. And there was a small little hill in the park where the farmer's market was. And I remember sitting on that hill, sitting in the sun, and thinking to myself, I'm really happy. Mm-hmm. And I was dirty, I was sweaty, I was tired. I was so tired that I didn't have the energy to just get up and go home yet. I needed to take a break.
Yeah.
But I can remember sitting there thinking, I'm happy, and this is what I want to do with myself. And I think that's probably the first time I felt that way. The other jobs that I had were more like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
This is what I think I'm supposed to do. And it was a risk. I had a daughter who was just a few years old, and so it was a big risk for sure. And I don't think I would recommend it to anybody. I think what I would recommend though is that if you're feeling a certain way and you're being pulled to do something that means a lot to you, we live in a country where you can take those chances. Mm-hmm. And a lot of places in the world you can't. Yeah. In a lot of places in the world there's not these opportunities. And in a lot of places, there's, if you don't make it, then that's it. Yeah. And so we live in a country where you can make yourself. You can break yourself as well. But,
of course.
But you can really make yourself to be what you're willing to work hard to be.
Yeah, because the opportunity, there's no guarantee of success with an opportunity. You're only guaranteed the opportunity.
That's right.
Which,
that's right.
To your point, you're going to fail or you're going to succeed, or you might do both, right? But it's an opportunity to do something different, to pursue your passion, or maybe you got a passion, you don't know what it is yet.
That's right. So that's right. And I think that getting over the idea of failure as being the end of it all, that's just not necessarily true.
That's just the beginning. Right?
Failures are learning, opportunities to learn about yourself and improve yourself. And even if you're miserable because you failed at something, at some point you might realize that I'm still alive. Yeah. And the world didn't end. And so let's do it again, or let's do something else.
I equate this to my daughter who's 16, mm-hmm. who doesn't deal with failure very, very well. Mm-hmm. And a lot of adults deal the same way with failure as a 16-year-old does, because if you don't fail often, mm-hmm. then you don't know how to react to failure. Sure. Right? So when she fails, I'm like, look, this is a great opportunity to think about it, improve upon it, and then try it again. Sure. She didn't get that. Adults don't get it either because they live in a safe spot. That's right. A little box, right? That's right. And the restaurant industry is not a safe industry to be in. It's if you watch anything on YouTube TV right now about restaurants, it's one of the riskiest businesses mm-hmm. you can be in. Mm-hmm. I would happen to agree with that. Mm-hmm. You guys probably would too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think our lives, both of our lives, have really been that. Veronica doesn't come from a family where there were other architects, and she doesn't come from a family where there's people in Houston necessarily. Her father was here, but to take that leap, to come here to go to university, to become an architect, to decide that that's what she wanted to do with her life, and to move here and to live on her own like that, it was a big risk for her, I'm sure. And it's interesting because what she knows and what she understands about architecture has really been a big influence on what we do as a restaurant. It maybe it's the artistic side, honey. I don't know what it is, but just something about it. And maybe it's also the value of the experience for the customer. Understanding that maybe I knew that, and maybe I understood it a little bit, but I didn't know how to express it.
Mm-hmm.
And Veronica's given me a really good education in understanding that,
which is funny because on the flip side, never having worked in a restaurant, never really having any kind of exposure to a restaurant. I mean, in college, I worked at Ninfa's for 2 months, and I was terrible. I did not know how to help anyone. But I remember the first time working the register at El Burro, because I would work at Gensler. I'd get off about 5:30, which was the earliest I ever got off at Gensler.
So when y'all opened up El Burro and the Bull, you were still working at Gensler?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
They used to make fun of me that I was Superwoman because I would literally change in the bathroom before I walked over to go work an 8-hour shift to close at midnight.
So Gensler was downtown also?
Yeah.
Okay.
About
Okay.
4 or 5 blocks from the restaurant.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I'd change in the bathroom, I'd go run over, and I'd work the register. But for me, that was the first time I felt a sense of pride in what I was serving, and a real connection to the food, even though I wasn't making any of it.
Right.
Which is something I like.
But you're connected to it. But you're connected to it.
I was very connected to it.
Right.
And I was very proud of what John had put together, and it kind of gave me an ability to make sure that the customer or whoever I was serving was happy and satisfied with what they were eating,
Right.
and had a real honest interest in what, I don't know, their happiness.
And John, when you were creating menus and talking about what you wanted to do, did you tap into Veronica's also family history and what they
absolutely.
ate? And so,
I mean, absolutely. Texas is regional. We call it Texas regional cuisine. Smoked Texana is what we call it, Texas regional cuisine. Because having traveled, Veronica spent time in France and a lot of places in Europe and in this country as well, obviously in China, Russia as well. Veronica spent time in doing,
which is very good, but has great Texas barbecue.
They probably.
I mean
now.
vodka.
But so we look at Texas as like it's a country of its own. There's no place in America that's quite like Texas. So when you go to the eastern border, the accents are different, the food is different, the homes are built different. When you go to El Paso, accent is different, the food is different, the construction is different. When you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You go to Lubbock, you go to Dallas, it's different than it is down here. The humidity down here, the climate is different. The beach, you literally, Beaumont, the accent is so deep there.
Right.
Yeah.
When you go to El Paso, I was blown away at the number of people that weren't Hispanic but spoke Spanish. Like and I don't think
or
they
at least
really
the accent.
right like the accent, like even in Houston they call it San Felipe, but in El Paso it doesn't matter what race or culture you are, you say San Felipe.
Okay.
Right? Like
yeah.
I mean that's just the way it is there, and I was just kind of like, wow, this is great.
Which just explains why I got so many weird looks when I was looking for directions.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime I was in town.
So when you're describing like San Felipe, which is what I say, you're saying you say San Felipe?
San Felipe.
Oh.
Or
But
San Jacinto.
Some people just say San Jacinto.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or San Felipe.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but in El Paso, there seems to be a real grasp of the region.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And appreciation for even the border and the opportunities that are there to have fun or to do business or whatever it might be.
Sure.
And so we see the food as being different. And so my introduction, let's say, to chili Colorado, which Colorado in Spanish means the color red. And so it's a deep red chili, which is the influence of Texas red. That's a pure thing there. And so that's a part of what you guys saw tonight with some of that pork belly with a little bit of a red tinge to
Yep.
it. And then we're also going to be doing a chili Colorado tamale, excuse me.
No, you said it right for me.
The gringos were like, all right, yeah, that sounds delicioso.
There's a little white in him after all.
And I think for a competition not long ago, we did the chili Colorado. And so that's been an influence on eating bread with our pozole versus the tostada is another thing too that they do there.
Because it's Sonoran. A lot of people, I think, don't know that. It's the difference between eating flour tortillas and corn tortillas.
Right.
Corn tortillas are more, southern. I won't say southern Mexico, but like central Mexico, where northern Mexico eats more flour.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so that's, these are all things that I've learned and learned more about being with Veronica and her being a big part of all these things.
Very cool.
When we say El Burro and the Bull, it's half English and half Spanish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly how the food is that we're making. We strongly do believe that that Texas cuisine is based on Mexican and German cuisines, and Central Texas again is a very a prime example of that, having places like San Antonio and San Marcos right next to Green and New Braunfels, which was called New Berlin at one time, right?
Yeah.
Harrisburg City was a German folks, and Houston at one point was a German colony, but we also have some of the best Tex-Mex around. So to ignore those things, I think, it doesn't do either side justice, and to embrace those things, I think, is super important. And Veronica's taught me a lot about the cuisine that's down there.
And that, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. We sell boudin. We carry a great boudin.
Really?
Which the smoked boudin
On
is
my way.
The smoked boudin is very Eastern.
Yeah.
The chili Colorado and the pozole is very Western.
Love that.
We think of the stockyards and stuff up in Dallas when we think about the steaks that we sell and that we carry.
Still certified Angus beef?
Yeah, we
Or
use
prime,
we use a 44 Farms prime product.
Okay.
We buy primals and then we hand cut the steaks ourselves.
Okay, nice.
And we do a steak night actually. It was really good, and we're looking forward to bringing that back again at El
Cool.
Burro. To get back to kind of what Veronica has been an influence on, I think even when you walk into our other brand, Henderson and Kane, you feel a certain age to it that really wasn't there, even though it's been a store since 1937. She had a big part of kind of returning it back to what it was that we might not have had.
It's
before.
a warm, comfy, I don't know what it is. It's very welcoming when you walk in. And maybe it's the mismatched chairs. Maybe it's the little tables, almost like bistro tables. It's the line of wall of coolers, and then the meat case, but also I think it's the employees that work there that reach out, who are either behind the counter, will reach out with their voice or reach out with a smile and be like, "Hey, how's it going? Welcome, welcome. What's going on?" And
That's cool, man.
I'm
We
glad to
appreciate
hear you say that, because those are all the reasons why I'm in love with that place.
Yeah, it's a great location. I think we could probably talk about this all day, but what I want you guys to touch on, I think is very important. Henderson and Kane, you got to go. What's the address to Henderson and Kane?
715 Henderson Street.
Go in, grab a beer. I mean, it's a weekly joint. It's a neighborhood joint. It's super cozy and super cool. But El Burro and the Bull, you were just in Bravery Hall, right? You've been in Bravery Hall for how long?
No, I'm sorry, Conservatory.
Conservatory.
El Burro and the Bull is located
For how
in
long?
Conservatory.
How long, y'all?
4 years.
4 years.
4 years.
But no more.
Correct. We got the new building, brick and mortar. It's huge compared to our 150 square feet that we had in the conservatory. We're very proud of what we did at the conservatory. We really grabbed that, excuse the pun, but we grabbed that bull by the horns, and we really made it our own.
Yeah, good job.
We really made it our own, and
You were one of the
originals?
one of the originals, and I think the last original.
That's right.
Correct?
That's
yeah.
right. We were there the
okay.
longest. We did really good in sales, and really were proud of what we were doing. And more people live in downtown Houston than ever before.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to provide a place for people to go that they weren't breaking the bank, but offering also a broad menu and a lot of choices, so that you could come in on Monday night for steak night, you can come in on Wednesday night for tacos, you can come in on Friday night for barbecue.
Cool.
And we had a lot of that. We had a lot of guys that worked in downtown that would see us at lunch. They'd come back in the evening time with their buddies or with their wives and have dinner. And it was really good to us, man. We really, really liked it there. We just were ready to spread our wings, like we said, and this building literally just fell in our lap.
So was that the very first location, very first restaurant you had?
It was.
Yeah, so 4 years, man, that's a lifetime in the restaurant business. I mean, literally, So it makes sense that you're ready to spread your wings. You're ready to get outside of walking down 2 flights of stairs,
right,
back of the restaurant, kind of dark, limited.
And after doing all these dishes that we did at all these various events, a lot of barbecue festivals and things like that, we were very limited in how much we could add to the menu there. So we knew there wasn't much growth to be had in terms of the menu. And so we could have a special every now and then, but that was just about it.
And so this was a good opportunity for us to find a venue for those dishes that we hope to kind of put out in the world. And we take a lot of pride, I think, and in pushing the barbecue scene to love the smoke part of it, not just the brisket, not just the sausage or the turkey, but the smoke, as primal as the smoke is, and how deep it runs in all of our genes, you know what I mean, and how much it means to us when we crave it. I think we take a lot of pride in offering smoked dishes like we brought today. Because there's no doubt in my mind that it's barbecue in one way or another, because it did come off of our smoker, and the sauces that we made were with smoked elements as well, and it means a lot to us.
It takes a special hand to be able to match that. People may think like, oh, like I'll do a sauce or something and add liquid smoke or something to it to add that smoky flavor, but to be able to take the dishes and pair them so well, especially like with like the pumpkin that you did, to be able to bring that smoke element into that, and then that super savory side of things, it balanced out really well, especially with that crema that you did. It was just like that takes a special mind to think outside the box that far.
It's probably a nod to your background too, the different varieties of foods you've touched along the way, your heritage, so to speak, and Veronica's as well. But I would say, while the dishes you brought to us today were awesome, thank you so much for doing that, and they all had a smoked element. Everything we've had at the barbecue festivals is also a nod to your creativity, because if you weren't doing a very good job, they wouldn't invite you back, right? Or you wouldn't be involved in the process.
Sure.
So I've seen since the first couple that the level of food has elevated over and over and over again, but very sophisticated. I mean, there's some pictures that I took of food, that were beautiful but also delicious. And not a lot of people can say that. It can be delicious and look like a sloppy Joe. I'm cool with that, because I'm part redneck. Right. But at some point, you want it to be elevated, and you're like, should I eat it or should I not eat it? Y'all's food has always been a very good representation of elevated fusion with a smoke element.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Veronica and her brother Jesse, who is one of our chefs, are a big part of that. A huge driving force behind the things that we do, and it wouldn't be the same without them, that's for sure.
Cool.
Opening up your own spot, I think from the early parts of the conversation, I think it's very interesting that you had at a very young age people who were working tirelessly and really cared. Someone who says, I get to work with my family and I have my friends, come in. Obviously cares a lot about the product. And then you go over to Austin and you have two individuals that obviously give a damn about what they're serving and work tirelessly as well. Sure. Translating that over to opening up your own spot and then trying to get a workforce behind that. What, because everybody, oh, she's Superwoman, and it's like, yeah, no shit, you have to be if you're going to survive this. And I'm glad we have both of y'all on, because a lot of this does take two people. Even if the other individual is not involved in the business, they're still involved because they've got to handle things that this other individual, or even support this other individual. And I mean, shout out to my wife who supported me when I had my food truck for 3.5 years, where it was like, bye, and it's like, you got to put up with that. Yeah, it's like, I get the benefit of having the business, They don't get that side of it, It's like they just have an absentee, partner. So it's great to have both of y'all on, so that one, you can get the respect too, and you can get the recognition, hopefully on this podcast at least, to show what El Burro and the Bull has been able to become and what y'all are going to become. But again, sorry, that's a long tangent. Holy cow. But coming full circle to have your own thing, obviously you care, but to translate that over to your employees, because when we went in there to do the photos the one time, the staff couldn't have been more welcoming and awesome.
Impromptu on top of that.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Oh, that was Tay.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, we have some pretty incredible employees. Yeah. And I think, I don't want to toot our own horn, but I do think that what I've noticed is that the respect that we give to the food and what we're creating definitely carries on to them.
Sure.
And they know when we care about something, they're going to care about it. And we're very much involved in everything that happens there, even though we may not have the ability to be in 2 or 3 different places at one time.
Right.
And the employees, I think we've been blessed in a lot of ways in that they're just great people before they even make it to us. We've had a few youngsters who are growing up in our business, and so that's nice to have that influence, and teaching them these things. but we have a few people like Jacob and Lalo, and I mean, I could go down the list, but basically we have these employees that have been with us for 4 years since we started, 3 years, which is hard in the industry to claim. But they take a lot of pride in what they do, and I think something that we try to teach the employees is that, especially in barbecue, if you're on a board cutting, I try to tell them, look, man, you're on a stage right now, and you're performing on this stage, because when people order food, they don't just walk away. They're sitting there watching you, and you're performing on this stage for them. So how do you want to perform? How do you want people to see you? And it clicks for them, and they're like, oh yeah, it's right. So my station is going to be clean. Right. And so my knife skills I'm showing these people are going to be good, and I'm going to care about it, and I want this plate to look like something I'm going to eat every single time. And it's great, man. I don't know if we can take credit for all of it, because they're just great human beings.
But I'll be the first one to call it out, because that's how I am. Great employees are great employees when they show up. Mm-hmm. But retaining great employees starts from the ownership, the management, the leadership style. And I can promise you, the way you two walked in here and treated us like family from the beginning, if you treat your employees like that, even remotely close, which I'm guessing you probably do, why would they want to go work anywhere else? Because you brought a level of food in here that you didn't have to. We didn't talk about it. We didn't ask you to do it. You just did it. So if you're doing that for us, the first time we meet, I can only imagine what you're doing for your employees, and you don't want to toot your own horn, so I'll toot it for you. You don't keep employees for 4 years and then Beam. She literally lit up and you started naming off names because you know how great they are. Yeah. Well, that comes from, and we can get sidetracked, and I don't want to, but that comes from an understanding voice, a vested voice, voices that care and employ and want people to come back tomorrow. So I'll toot it for you. You're probably doing a hell of a job. Thanks, so man. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. And you don't have to say that you're doing it, but my guess is you are.
Well, listen, I think of things always in two different perspectives, and one perspective is always going to be that I want to be a good human being. We want to be good people. We want to be known as good people. We want to treat people good, and I want to feel good about what I'm doing. Then the other perspective is I want to be a good businessman. I want to be a successful businessman, and I want to make a living for myself.
Sure.
And so if I think to myself, we want to be good people, we need to treat all of these people with respect, that's a winner. If you want to be a good businessman, why would you want to leave your business in the hands of people that aren't happy and aren't satisfied?
Good point.
And don't have an interest in your business? Because I've seen it before, where the minute the ownership walks out of the door, it's kind of like a free-for-all.
Yeah.
And people are just waiting until the next time the ownership shows up, and then they'll get back in line again, right?
Because you can literally see from your spot in the conservatory, from what was your spot,
right.
4 other businesses, right. And you could watch their employees, so
that's
like
exactly
you've got
No, that's exactly right. And I want to feel good. When we have employees in the place, Veronica and I will think to ourselves, hey, we got what we needed to get done. Our employees are in the place, and we know we can depend on them. We know we can trust them. Let's go watch a movie.
Yeah.
Let's go visit my mom and pop, right? And so the freedom that we buy ourselves, again, I want to be a good businessman, and it is a little self-serving from that perspective, is that I want a good business. I want good employees because I know that my business is in good hands. Why would I not want that? Yeah. And I think sometimes ownership doesn't think of that. I have been on projects before in the past where, I've done a lot of consulting in a lot of different states and a lot of different cities. And there have been some places where I've gone where they've said, we've been in meetings, and the owner might say, well, let's hire 40 people, and then in 6 weeks we'll get rid of 10 of them, right? And all I could think to myself in that meeting was, why would you do that to people? What if they were quitting their other jobs to come and work for you, and then you're about to put them out on the street? You're using them like pawns. You're using them with not respecting them. And if that's the attitude, then how do you think your other employees are going to feel about it that did stay? They're going to be on edge. They're going to think that, well, I'm not important. So what makes you think that they're going to take care of your business, right? And that's super important.
That's really cool as a businessman, though, that you would take those experiences, right, and not forget them,
right,
and not jump in and say, okay, I know how to play the game. I'll protect myself, but apply that to your own business.
Sure.
Let's talk about that with your new location. So for what's coming, right? It's going to be pretty quick. You're hoping in mid-December. The new El Burro and the Bull.
Correct. We think in mid-December is when
Where is that located? Sorry.
5401 Harrisburg Boulevard.
Okay.
It's going to be an upstairs, downstairs location. Downstairs we're gonna call El Burro, a little more casual with counter service.
Very cool.
And then upstairs will be the Bull.
Okay.
Which will be again still have the barbecue, but we'll have a few more refined dishes. Some of the dishes that you got today, and just a different expression of the smoke. We want to offer as broad of an experience as possible, as broad of price points as we can offer, because we want to be as inclusive as possible. We want people to be able to come in and spend a $20 bill and have a great time. Or if you're doing an event or you feel like spending a $100 bill with us, then you can do that too, and we're going to provide you with something that you're really going to like.
And the building's a historical building, right? It's got this really cool cathedral ceiling.
So cool.
So it's really something to see, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting fact, or I guess research that I came across on the building is it has this beautiful barrel vault wood structured ceiling that's made up of small members. So to be more elaborate, that kind of structure really stems back to like the 1930s during the World War, when there was limited access to steel, limited access to larger spans of members, or wood members, I should say. And so this structure was designed by a German engineer and architect. Well, you want to say it?
No, go ahead. Well, let me just say this. So we took pictures of the place, and then Veronica's phone starts blowing up with all of her architecture friends saying, "Oh my gosh, that ceiling is incredible. By the way, that ceiling is called a lamella roof, which, by the way, comes from Germany, which makes a lot of sense because the German colony is Houston. And as we understand it, the gentleman that brought that from Germany is also responsible for the roof that was in the Astrodome.
Really?
And so we still need to make that solid connection, but it just seems to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We believe this church shows up in the local HCAD as being a 1960s building. Okay. But when you walk in there and get into like the attic area, there's no way it's from the 60s.
Much earlier.
It's much older than that. My father grew up in the neighborhood. Of course, my grandparents bought their home in the 1930s, I believe, there. And he grew up in the neighborhood, and he believes it may have been a church.
Okay.
And then there's a piece of furniture in there that looks like it came from a church.
Like a pew or something?
Yeah, exactly what it is. Exactly what it is.
How funny.
And then also in the research about this guy from Germany that was building these roofs, it said that he came here to America and was building churches.
Yeah.
So it just all kind of connects, and we hope that we can find that hard research, but there's very limited data on the architect.
So the interior architecture is super cool, but that sounds like you'll be doing a lot of build out.
It's actually not. It's a great space. It's got 2 fireplaces in it that were old with the building. It's got old, great hardwood floors that just have a lot of age to them. It's great, man. And downstairs is a little more just open space. Upstairs is really what got our attention.
Okay.
The gentleman that owns the building is a really great guy. Very, very excited about our brand. So much so that he's become an investor in the brand. And
shoot, if you gave him any of the stuff that you fed us, that's it. I'm writing the check now.
Right on. He super great guy, hardworking guy, and that's why we feel like we're trying to keep up with him. Really, to be honest with you, the building is going to open rather quickly. We hope to get back to that. We hope to have the doors open to bring people in, friends and family in December. We're hoping to have some kind of New Year's party there with friends and family, and then we hope to be open in January, maybe February at the latest. But we just want to be. We want to be completely ready to open the doors before we do. Even if the building's ready, we still want to make sure that all of our ducks in a row before we get service going.
If people want to follow that journey, what's the best way? Is it like your Instagram page, Facebook page?
Yeah, I'd say probably our Instagram page.
Yeah, Instagram El Burro and the Bull, at El Burro and the Bull.
Close.
Is that right? Sorry.
Burro and Bull.
Burro and Bull.
Yeah. And or at Henderson and Kane.
Yeah.
Both places.
Yeah.
And we keep images up there.
And so you'll go. Go ahead.
What's great about the 2 places is that people, I think, that didn't know El Burro and the Bull, or maybe only knew Henderson and Kane, have really started to connect the 2 together and see how they're similar and how they're different. which has been kind of fun.
So for all those that are going to listen in that area, you're going to keep Henderson and Kane open, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, okay,
oh my
good.
gosh, the neighbors would kill me if we didn't.
Yeah, for sure. That's we look forward to having both projects for sure.
And they'll be, I mean, they're different. They're very, very different.
Yeah.
So last thing is, any special shout outs, anybody you want to thank, anybody you want to give, praise to, and I'm sure there's a ton, but I mean, who would you like to give a special shout out to? Either, both of you.
For me, I would say a super shout out to my grandparents and my Uncle Tony.
I would say to Jesse.
Oh yeah, to Jesse, my brother-in-law, Veronica's brother. We brought him on board shortly after we opened the doors, and again, it wouldn't be the same without him. There's no way. He's a huge part of it. He's a huge influence on us, and he's just really good at what he does.
And very humble.
And very humble, a very humble guy. When you meet him, you'd never know how much of an impact he actually has on us. But great guy. And for you?
That was mine.
Oh.
You stole it.
She wants to take credit. I like that.
And one thing I really would like to say is that there's a lot of restaurants opening and a lot of guys that are popping places up, and I think that it's really important to remember that when we have restaurants and customers walk into our door, we're literally making things with our hands that people eat. We're making things, we're creating things. And at the very least, we hope that customers are satisfied with what they're getting. And at the most, on the other end of that, we hope that celebrations for families and just downtime when families can spend time around a table, which is very American.
Yeah.
We hope that a lot of these restaurants that are opening remember that and really, really know that what they're doing for people and for their customers is really important, because it's a big part of people's lives. You can serve parents, you serve kids. Those kids grow up, they get married, they have kids, and they're still at your restaurant, and it's because they love what you do and they feel good about what you provide for them.
Yeah.
So we have to remember that, and we have to remember that there's more butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers, it seems now, than there have been for a long time. And these things that we do are very important to the culture, not only in America but in Houston. And remember that, and do well, and good luck to everybody.
That's a great words
I
of
was
advice.
going to say, that's a great way to finish off the podcast.
I've enjoyed your food. I've enjoyed working with you, and I've enjoyed talking with you. And I'm really grateful that you guys took carved time out to come and educate us on who you are and hanging out. Y'all are so chill too. I feel like y'all might have like marijuana growing in your backyard.
Yeah, right.
I was going to say,
I'm not judging. I'm just saying.
with how quickly that building's going, I'd be freaking wild like crazy.
One day.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank y'all so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. So to all of the listeners, like and subscribe. 5 stars, 5 stars. We're out of here. The Cost of Goods Told podcast is made possible by the following sponsors. 0 Point Organics grows and supplies microgreens for over 30 major restaurants in the Houston area. Consistently perfect quality in flavor and appearance, their microgreens will be the best you or your customers have ever had every single time. Go to pointorganics.com. Duke's Premium Meats Home Delivery is committed to providing you with the best quality meat delivered right to your door. Offering certified Angus beef, grass-fed beef, Wagyu, and many more premium options, nobody beats Duke's Meats. Make sure to check out all that Duke has to offer at dukespremiummeats.com. Criswell Culinary aims to create a new standard of unique, affordable hot sauces that satisfies the more developed cravings of today. Bernie Brand Texas-style hot sauce is a boldly layered sauce with density and personality to proudly represent Texas. Go to BernieBrand.com to find a retailer near you. That's Bernie, Boerne, brand.com.